Well, greetings and salutations. Are we getting ready to go to Betty Bye? Yes, we are. So I finished my prayers. I did not use incense. Hopefully that will help with my allergies. Tonight's remote, the first thing I want to talk about is prayers for the people of Paris. As you know, I had done a remote a couple of weeks ago, and we had talked about a remote viewing technique. This is more of a classic remote viewing technique paired with heart-centered remote viewing. I'd love to work with the classic remote viewing people. They should reach out to me so that we can do some clinical studies, right? Wouldn't that be cool? But as I had mentioned in that talk a couple of weeks ago, I had scanned, I had decided to do a grid, a classic grid as an empath. And when you scan a grid as an empath, what you are doing is you are imagining that your own body is a kind of rod, a dowsing rod that's going to sense through the sensation of emotions what is happening in a particular area, so that theoretically a good empath, if they were blind, if they were put into a room where there had been a major fight or something like that, and then the empath were blind and brought into the room, they could theoretically, if you did the clinical study properly, the individual would have no knowledge that some type of violence had taken place. But they could theoretically, through the sensations of their body, be able to describe how it feels or how it felt to be in the room because of the energy being dissipated. This is how an empath operates. To be clear, human beings, if they are healthy, are unbelievably empathetic, and they can express their empathy in ways that are positive. And the fact that I think that we're living in a time right now that lacks so much empathy for the homeless, vulnerable persons, etc., we're really seeing the challenge of how can we be more empathetic. So we're living in a time right now where we're all being called to see what we can do to be more empathetic. So I was scanning the grid, and for whatever reason I decided to start in Europe, and I wound up over Paris and saw fighting and protest over Paris, and specifically I saw a lot of protest south of Paris. I take it that's on the other side of the river, so it wasn't in the north, surprisingly enough, which I would have expected. So I put up here's a picture in the main city, the downtown area. So what's happening is that it was May Day today, and as I had mentioned in the previous remote, it wasn't just about the pensions, but that there was growing tension happening in Paris, particularly due to rents, lack of housing, desperation, particularly amongst immigrants. And so part of that spillover happened today, and you can unfortunately expect that to continue on. Because it really is a crisis situation there in terms of housing, etc. And so unfortunately, that is happening. The other thing I wanted to say is that when I had gone down into the remote and scanned the grid for Ukraine, and specifically the Wagner group, I felt that they would be out of ammo in 4 days. Now it's public information. Well, now it's 4 days, so now it's 2 days. So I'm going to go ahead and predict that Wagner is making public statements like, oh, it's bureaucracy, oh, it's bureaucracy. And I can't help but think, do they not realize they've been fired? Because we knew they got fired last month, right? So I don't know if they're negotiating not to be fired. Maybe they're negotiating down the cost. Could that be what's going on? Maybe they can get the cost down, but the energy just feels like it's dissipating in Ukraine. Like they've lost 100,000 soldiers in Bakhmut. 100,000 Russian soldiers have died in Bakhmut. So if you go back to the remote, what Putin wanted was for Wagner Group to be surrounded without ammo to pay for making him look like a fool. Because according to what Putin told us, the head of Wagner had egged him on. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen if you surround yourself by sycophants, right? They're going to egg you on, which put, in this case, Putin in a disastrous situation. But Wagner specifically thought that they were going to get rich. So no ammo, no pay, and a hideous end probably to a hideous organization. All right, thank you everyone for watching. I'm going to say 2 days. Look, this Putin has surprised us, so it could shock us, and Putin could say, no, I'm not going to give up. He could snap out of this state he's gotten in with Xi and give weapons to the soldiers, to Wagner. It could happen. They've got less than 48 hours based on the information I'm picking up and based on a lot of what he's coming out with. I think it's worse than even he's saying. But here's the main thing. It's not bureaucracy. I simply, and this is where I kind of wish other HCRV practitioners would kind of pipe in, is that even if Russia wanted to continue this war, the resources simply aren't there. The weapons are not there. The supplies are not there. It's not an issue of bureaucracy. Their war coffers are completely bankrupted, and they simply do not have the resources to continue to supply this war. And that is why Wagner's not getting supplies. All right. It's been interesting. It's been interesting to remote view this stuff. And thank you all for watching. Be well.